Coming up, which of the Nets rookies will shine next season? Is Brooklyn destined for top lottery odds? Will Cam Thomas be back? I'll answer all those fan questions and more after this.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm Erik Slater, Brooklyn Nets beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day. This show is 100% free on all those great platforms. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And on today's show, it's Fan Take Friday. I took questions from all of you on a wide range of subjects, including Brooklyn's rookie class, the front office's plan for next season, free agency, and more. So let's get right into it, hitting these questions in the order that they came in. No particular order of doing them. First question, I know this is subject to change, but with what you know right now, what is our opening day lineup? And who are the first five off the bench? Which rookie is most likely and which rookie is least likely to contribute right away? For the starting lineup, I think that there's a number of iterations that the Nets could go with, but if I'm going to say the most likely and what I feel, I would say Yegor Dioman, Cam Thomas, Terrence Mann, Michael Porter Jr., Nick Claxton. That's my inclination. That's just the feel of where I'm going. I think Yegor Dioman as the top pick in the draft is a lock to be in the starting lineup. I think it will be at point guard. I assume Cam Thomas will be back in free agency, whether on the qualifying offer or on a new contract extension. If they bring him back, he's going to be starting at the 2. And then that third spot, it could be Zaire Williams could get in there, but I went with Terrence Mann because just historically looking at Shawn Marks in this Nets front office, they typically go with the veterans. Like there have been questions in the past few seasons about Dorian Finney-Smith as a veteran guy. Like, would he come off the bench? Were there other guys that were worthy of starting over him? And that's always left him with that starting job. That's kind of just the way that they've operated. And then Michael Porter Jr. is a lock to be in the starting lineup, and Nick Claxton as well. So, Yegor, CT, Mann, MPJ, Claxton, that would be the starting five that I think they'll go with. The second unit, who are the first five off the bench, it's kind of hard to say. I think there are a few guys that are locks to get playing time initially. I'd say Day'Ron Sharpe, Zaire Williams, Nolan Traore, Noah Clowney, and probably Drake Powell. Like those are the five that I would go with off the bench. And that obviously leaves some guys who you're going to want to see play who are not in that top 10. And Jordi Fernandez was asked a lot of questions about this. How is he going to manage the rotation with 5 rookie first-round picks coming in? It was a reason that a lot of people thought that the Nets were going to consolidate and not make all of their picks because it's just hard to develop all of these guys at one time. But those are the guys I would expect to be getting playing time off the bat. And then you also have guys, obviously, like Ben Surratt, Danny Wolf, Dariq Whitehead, all of the non-guaranteed guys beyond that. I would think that there's a decent chance, I'll get into this more later, but Danny Wolf, Ben Surratt might spend some time in the G League with Long Island. The Nets have used that as a tool to develop first-round picks in the past, and with them having 5 guys and a lot of other guys that need to get playing time, I would not be surprised if Wolf and Surratt spent some time there in the beginning of the season. Dariq Whitehead going into his 3rd season, the Nets are going to have to see what they have with him. Could he be in Long Island? In his 3rd season, I think it's tough for him to be spending time in Long Island. It's not out of the question, but I would expect him to be a guy who's working into the Nets rotation, if not on a nightly basis, a guy who's going to get minutes enough so that they can evaluate him. So that's kind of how I see the first 5 going. That's how I see kind of the bench going. But I think there's going to be a lot of mixing and matching. There's obviously going to be injuries. And there's going to be some, I think, shuffling between Long Island and the pros for some of these rookie guys. Probably Ben Surratt and Danny Wolf at the forefront there. Next question. Are you taking the over or under on Nets 20.5 win projection this year, and why? I've gone back and forth on this, and I think it's kind of tough because the sports books that set these over-unders, they're usually pretty on the money. Like they spend a lot of time researching this. Obviously, they were off on the Nets last season, but 20.5 wins, I think, is like right around where I would put it for the Nets. I might go slightly over, but like not much. Like I think they'll be right in that, like 19 to 23, 24 win range if I had to guess. And the reason that I say that I think that they're going to be there, whether they go over or under, I expect them to be one of the worst teams in the league. And with that, they'll be in, like I said, that 19 to 23, 24 range, I think. And the reason that I say that, and I think they'll be worse than last season, is you just look at the way that the roster has changed. They went from Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith as veteran wings. They replaced them with Michael Porter Jr. and Terrence Mann. Now, there's been debate about MPJ versus Cam Johnson, who's the better player. I think it's safe to say that CJ and DFS to MPJ and Terrence Mann is a downgrade overall. I think that goes without question. And then Dennis Schroeder was really the biggest part of the Nets exceeding expectations early last season, starting out 9-10, and really put them behind the 8 ball in the tank race. So they had Schroeder, and then they obviously replaced him with D'Angelo Russell later in the season. But you go from Schroeder and Russell, like having those veteran point guard presence, you go from that to just rookie point guards and rookie ball handlers. The Nets do not have a veteran ball handler on this roster. And the easiest way to handicap an NBA offense and an NBA team, in my opinion, is to take away the semblance of ball handling, shot creation, playmaking, just all the stuff that contributes to, being an offensive engine. The Nets are now going to be looking at guys like Yegor Dioman, Nolan Traore, Ben Saraf. Like Cam Thomas will obviously handle a lot of ball handling responsibilities. MPJ probably will too. But the downgrade of going from those veteran guys, particularly Schroeder, who opened the last season on fire, to rookie ball handlers, I think that is going to lend itself to a lot more losing. And I think that there's, that's intentional. There's a reason that the Nets did that, and they didn't bring in a veteran point guard for this roster. And then the next reason that I think that they're going to be worse than last season is just the urgency after what happened last year. They opened hot last year. They get the 6th best lottery odds. They fall to 8th in the draft. They were only 2 spots ahead of what the pick that they traded away with the Phoenix Suns pick. They were only 2 spots ahead of that. And they traded 4 picks to the Houston Rockets, essentially, to get back their 2025 and 2026 first rounders. So there wasn't that much of a payoff last season because they were only 2 spots ahead of the pick that they traded away. So this year, they really need to justify that trade, in my opinion, and they really need to show some urgency to put themselves in a position to get top lottery odds. There are 3 elite prospects at the top of this coming draft in AJ Dubnsta, Cam Boozer, and Darren Peterson. So I would expect the Nets to be motivated to get top lottery odds, and at the worst, give themselves somewhat of a floor as well as a ceiling. Next question on a similar note. With the Eastern Conference being historically shallow, what do you think will happen if the Nets find themselves in the play-in bubble heading down the stretch? Despite the young and inexperienced roster, stranger things have happened. Do you believe Marks and Sy are willing to egregiously tank to ensure better lottery odds, or will they just let the coaches coach? Last year, I think we saw in the beginning of the year, they were letting Jordi Fernandez coach. They were letting him do his thing. I think they're going to let him do his thing regardless. But we saw down the stretch of the season, slowly but surely, a little bit more urgency and a little bit more, holding some guys out for injuries down the stretch of the year. Like the final 10 games was really just like a skeleton crew out there for the Nets. And for all the reasons that I just outlined above, with them needing to justify that trade, in my opinion, with the Houston Rockets, which right now does not look like a good deal. Now, that could completely change if they are to, get a better pick this year and end up in like the top 3 and land one of these top guys, then the trade is completely worth it. So I think that they understand that, and they're going to need to justify that trade. And with that, I would expect there to be just a lot more. I think there'll be a lot more organic losing just because they brought in a lot of rookies. Like, you have 5 rookie first-round picks on this roster, 3 of which are going to be lead ball handlers for your team. So I think that in itself will lend itself to some losing. And I do think there will probably be some added steps taking, whether it be trading away a veteran like Man or MPJ potentially, like maybe not, but I think that could be in the cards. I think guys, if they're injured, might be sitting out more than they did last year. So all of those things are just my predictions. And I think that, there's a lot of opportunity for the Nets to get a top pick in this draft and to set themselves up with a core building block. Like, they got 5 first-round picks. We'll see what they're going to be in this draft, but I don't think that there's a lot of hope that like Yegor Dioman's going to be like a star, like number 1 or number 2 player. Could he? It's definitely not out of the question, but I don't think that it's like the likeliest outcome based on what draft analysts had to say. So getting a guy like Darren Peterson, AJ Dubnsta, or Cam Boozer would really put the Nets in position to set themselves up for years to come, on top of the foundation that they laid with the 5 first-round picks in this draft. So I would expect them to act accordingly, and I would expect there to be a little bit more urgency than what they showed last season. But we got a lot more questions about the Nets rookie class, about free agency, and a lot of other subjects. So I'll get to all that after a quick break. But before that, want to tell you about our friends over at OpenPhone. Guys, if you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need, maybe for a plumber or a service provider. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on. That's why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. Guys, OpenPhone lets me manage business calls and texts from a single app. The shared inbox feature is truly a game changer. Your team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat, and their AI agent handles after-hours calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer. Guys, OpenPhone is offering my listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. Coming back from the break on today's Locked On Nets episode, this Fan Take Friday, answering all your fan questions, responding to your takes, and more. Next one, aside from Yegor Dioman, do you see any other rookies cracking the starting lineup at some point this season, either by their own efforts or by default due to injury or other pieces being traded away? You know, of the rookie class, I could see Nolan Traore maybe getting into the starting lineup. I mean, we know that Yegor Dioman is a guy who has some potential to play on the wing. A lot of people that I talk to think that that's going to be his position long term. He may struggle, like we saw him at BYU. We saw him at Summer League struggle with handling ball pressure and bringing, the ball up and initiating offense and handling in the open court. That's only going to get more difficult when you make the step up to trying to lead an NBA offense against NBA defenders who are just faster, more physical, and all those things. So if he struggles, maybe there's a chance he could slide to the wing. Maybe there's a chance that Traore takes over the point guard duties in that case. But there also just could be injuries where Traore gets in. Like, he's obviously, I think, the next guy up in that regard, with being the second pick in the draft. Maybe Drake Powell, like if Terrence Mann gets traded or hurt, if Zaire's not playing well, like he could find his way in there. But I would say Traore is probably the most likely outside of them, but I would expect those guys outside of Yegor Dioman to begin the season on the bench. Another Yegor question: if Dioman will be playing as a wing and not a point guard, why did we pick him at number 8? I think that Yegor is going to open the season at point guard. Like, do I think that it's going to be the smoothest thing, like him running the point and running the Nets offense this season? No. But I think that, a big reason that the Nets picked Yegor was the positional versatility. I think that they found that attractive of he has the size. He could be this lead ball handler. And if not, he could play on the wing or he can be doing both. Like, I talked to Jordy Fernandez at Summer League, and there was obviously a lot of questions about how are these guys going to fit together with Yegor Dioman, Nolan Traore, and Ben Suraf, 3 guys who were perceived as point guards. And what Jordy had to say was that the Nets don't really see themselves as having positions in that way. Like, they see themselves having a center, like a front court and a back court, but they see a lot of those first 3 spots as interchangeable, as I think a lot of NBA teams do now. Like, it is trending further and further towards positionless basketball. Now, I do think that you do know who the primary ball handler and the point guard is on a team. Like, there is going to be that one guy, but I think the Nets' point is having multiple ball handlers, having multiple guys who can run, initiate offense and then also run second side actions, and being able to just throw all those different guys at defenses. I think that they see that as a little bit of a coverage buster and an advantage to them. And I don't disagree with them. So I think that Yegor's positional versatility, I think they see that as an overall strength and something that attracted them to him. So I asked Yegor a lot of questions about this at Summer League, and he said that he feels that he got too much into throughout the pre-draft process and in college, just like point guard, point guard, point guard. I'm a point guard. And now he says he just considers himself a playmaker. So I think that that's what Yegor is. He wants to be a playmaker. He wants to be a guy who can fit in a variety of ways. And if his 3-point shot can hold up the way that it did it at Summer League, I think he has a good chance to do it. So that's what I'd say about that. Next question: which players from this year's rookie class do you expect to start in the G League? And of those players, how long would you expect each one to stay there before joining the NBA team? I think Ben Suraf, I outlined it before, Ben Suraf and Danny Wolf, I think would be the most likely. They're the last 2 picks. And then the Nets also just have, they obviously have Yegor Dioman and Nolan Traore as point guards ahead of Saraf. They have Cam Thomas, another guy who's going to have the ball a lot probably. And I just think that Saraf, being that third guy, may spend some time in the G League to get acclimated, get him some more game reps. Same thing with Danny Wolf. Obviously, he can play power forward or center, but in the front court rotation, the Nets already have Nick Claxton, Day'Ron Sharp, Noah Clowney. Obviously, Drew Timme could be on the team too. I just think that there's a lot of guys ahead of Wolf and Saraf, and with them being the last two players, I think it's going to be tough to get all of these guys reps right off the bat. Maybe that changes after the trade deadline. Maybe some pieces are moved off this Nets roster, but of those guys, if any are going to start in the G League, I think Saraf and Wolf are the safest bets. Next question, any idea the players with the non-guaranteed contracts that will likely stay? So I did an episode on this. Some things have changed since then, but right now the Nets have 13 players on standard contracts. That's if you include Cam Thomas being back, which I expect him to be. So you're allowed to carry 15. So they have 2 open standard roster spots right now. Now, that could change. They could make some moves. They still have $22 million in cap space left. A lot of things could happen between now and the start of the regular season. But right now, they have 2 open spots. I've said that I think Keon Johnson is probably the likeliest to stay. And just for those listening who didn't ask this question, the guys the Nets have on non or partially guaranteed contracts are Keon Johnson, Jalen Wilson, Tyrese Martin, Drew Timme, and also Ricky Council, who they just signed, played for the 76ers the last couple of seasons. Of that group, I think Keon's the likeliest to stay just because of a combination of a number of factors. Role last season, he was the most prominently featured. He's the youngest at 23 years old. I think he has the best athleticism of the group, which I think the Nets feel they can use defensively and could lend itself to him having some more upside. So I'd say Keon is probably the likeliest to stay. And of those other guys, between Drew Timme, Jalen Wilson, Tyrese Martin, Ricky Council, if you have one more spot, I'd say Drew Timme is the guy I would prioritize. I said that in a recent episode. I just think that he has shown the most production, the most offensive talent. Obviously, there are limitations there from an athleticism standpoint. But if he can get the three-point shot to, come around, and while he hasn't shot well yet, he had some glimpses of it in the G League last year, and I think the stroke looks smooth. If he can get that to come around, I think there's a lot of other tools that you can add to his game. Whereas guys like Jalen Wilson hasn't really shot well throughout his career at any point, is a grounded athlete. Don't know how much upside there is there. Tyrese Martin, going to be 27 years old during this season. Think I like him, but I think he kind of is what he is. Ricky Council, we'll see, but he had an expanded opportunity with the 76ers last year and didn't really do much to take advantage of it. So I'd say Drew Timme is the guy I would be prioritizing. And I think Keon Johnson, based on the role he had last season, is a guy that the Nets would probably want to get another look at. Next one, pick a player that you think will come out of nowhere and pleasantly surprise Nets fans this season. That's tough. A guy who's going to come out of nowhere. I don't think there's not a ton of new faces. And if I'm going to say Michael Porter Jr., I don't think that would be coming out of nowhere because he's the highest paid player on the Nets roster. I'd probably say maybe Noah Clowney. He's a guy who I could see, really having an encouraging performance this year. We saw at the end of his rookie season, flashed a lot as a rim protector, as a guy who was shooting well from the outside. We saw him shoot really well at the beginning of last season, and then he had a bunch of ankle injuries that kind of derailed the year. But Clowney, he came into the league as, I think, the second youngest draft pick in Nets franchise history. If he can get into his third season now, if he had a little bit of time to add some weight and muscle to his body, if he can continue to shoot at a high level, and if he can add some ancillary stuff to his game from a ball handling perspective of being able to put the ball on the floor, attack closeouts, maybe do some things off script offensively, I think that there is potential there. And he's definitely not a guy that I think fans should be closing the book on as somebody who could develop a lot more. So Noah Clowney, a guy that I would be looking out for to potentially maybe bust out this season and really encourage fans with what he can do. Last one before a break. Does the organization consider Nick Claxton as a part of the core, or are they looking to build with him as an asset, or are they looking at him as a guy who could be flipped down the line? I just did a whole episode on this with Lucas Kaplan, and I would say that it's tough to tell right now. Nick is the longest tenured player on this Nets roster. They gave him a contract that was 4 years, nearly $100 million, but they were kind of just had to use up money at that point, and they front loaded it to a way that it was advantage to them, where it's going to be attractive in the final 2 years or more attractive as a trade asset because it's a descending contract. And Nick was not healthy last season. He played, I think, 70 games, but he supposedly was dealing with the back thing. He told us that he was still dealing with that going into when the season ended, going into the offseason. So we'll see. As of right now, Nick is going to be 27 at the end of this coming season, and the Nets just drafted 5 guys who are 19 to 21. They're on a little bit of a different timeline. They probably need another year, at least probably 2 or 3 before they're getting back into contention. At that point, Nick will be 29, 30 years old. So is it out of the question that he could be a part of the core moving forward? Definitely not. But I do think that he's a guy that, with Day'Ron Sharpe waiting in the wings, with them drafting Danny Wolf, I think that he's a guy that'll definitely be a trade candidate moving forward. Have a few more questions from you guys on the Nets rookies, on Cam Thomas, on free agency, on rotations, and a lot of other stuff. I'll get to all that when I close out Locked On Nets after a quick break. But before that, I want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. Guys, you can use FanDuel to track your favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether you're placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet right into the 9th inning, FanDuel makes it feel like you're part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Coming out of the break, closing out today's Locked On Nets episode on this Fan Take Friday. Rolling through all the remaining questions I got from you guys. What kind of role do you expect Dariq Whitehead to have on the team this year? I think that's tough to say. Like I just outlined, I got asked the first question on here about the starting 5, about the first 5 off the bench. Do I think that Dariq is necessarily going to be in that top 10? Probably not. It would be tough for me to see them prioritizing him over some of the rookies like, obviously Dioman, no. Troy, I think, will be ahead of him. Drake Powell, I think, will be ahead of him. Then you even have Saraf and Danny Wolf also. And the Nets just have a lot of guys right now with them bringing in 5 first-round picks. But I think they'll definitely want to get a look at him. I mean, he played down the stretch of last season, but they haven't really gotten an extended look at him, in the rotation. So I definitely think they'll want to get a look at him. It might be tough, but I think that they're going to find a way, with this also being a tanking season, to kind of rotate guys, shuffle guys in and out, get a look at the guys they want to. And for Dariq Whitehead, it's tough to say for a guy who's only 21 years old, but this might be a make or break year for him. He's had adequate time to get his body right. That was obviously the conversation with him coming out of Duke and last season. I need to get game reps. I need to get my body acclimated. And he's had time. So it's at this point, it's let's see what you got. Going into the 3rd year, the Nets are going to have options with him moving forward about what they want to do roster-wise. So I think he's a guy that'll get playing time, and he's just going to need to show some more explosiveness, some more things with his body, as he gets further and deeper into having more time to train and, further removed from injuries. So we'll see. Next question, do you think the Nets are one of the teams looking to trade for Giannis? If so, what would a Brooklyn package for Giannis look like? We've obviously heard about the Nets having interest in Giannis for the last 2 years. Brian Lewis, colleague, comes on the pod a lot, has reported extensively on that. I definitely think the Nets are interested in Giannis, but they also just traded 5 first-round. They also just made 5 first-round picks in this draft. They made the roster a lot younger. Does that mean that they'd be out on Giannis? No. If he becomes available, I definitely think they're a team that would throw their hat in the ring and at least inquire, obviously, but I'm not sure. They're on a new timeline now. They would need to do a lot of work to, surround Giannis with a championship caliber supporting cast. What would a Brooklyn package for Giannis look like if they were to trade for him this season? I think you have MPJ as a main salary fillers, making close to $40 million per year. That's easy. You could probably throw in a prospect or 2 from this year's draft class, and then you have all the draft capital the Nets have. I think that 2032 unprotected Nuggets first-round pick will be a pick that'll headline any Nets trade package moving forward. So you have MPJ, you have young prospects, you have that unprotected Nuggets pick, you have all the Knicks picks and all the other things the Nets have. They have 9 tradable firsts right now. So that's what I think a package for Giannis would start at. Next question, is Shawn Marks on the hot seat this season if none of the draft picks show signs of potential. I think, if you just let a GM make an NBA record 5 first-round picks, you're going to have to give him some time and allow, give some grace to see how these guys develop. I'm not sure that you can say after a rookie season that any of these guys are bust. They're 19 years old coming into the NBA. Rookie ball handlers usually struggle, early on anyway. For him to be on the hot seat, these guys would have to look really, really, really bad, I think, for him to lose his job. Otherwise, when you let a GM start a rebuild, you let a GM do a draft, a historic draft the way the Nets did last year, I think you got to give them a little bit of time to see how it plays out. Next one, which team will have a higher record next year, the Celtics or the Nets? Unbiased answer, please. I don't think I need to have any bias. I think the Celtics, while they are diminished, I think they'll definitely have a better record than the Nets. I think they'll be a fringe playoff team. The Nets are going to be one of the worst teams in the league next year, I think. So definitely the Celtics. Next one, if/when the Nets re-sign Cam Thomas, will they use him as a sixth man rather than a starter? I expect fully Cam Thomas to be back in the starting lineup this season. I don't really have any questions about that. I think his role, there could be some variance in what his role is, depending on whether he signs a contract extension or whether he is playing on the qualifying offer. Because if he signs a contract extension, a 2-year offer, say, that the Nets have reportedly been giving him, then the Nets have him under team control. They have some incentive to, to see what he is, to feature him a little bit more, maybe potentially to build up his trade value or just to further evaluate him. If he takes the 1-year qualifying offer, he's going to be an unrestricted free agent next season. He'll have trade veto rights, on any trade, which will limit the Nets' leverage in negotiations during this coming season. And when guys sign the qualifying offer, restricted free agents, that almost always signals that they're done with the team that they're on and they're going to move on after that season. So if he is to take that QO, it doesn't give the Nets a ton of incentive to feature him or to play him over anybody, especially if that's going to lead to them winning some more games than they need to. So I think whether Cam takes the qualifying offer or whether he signs a contract extension will definitely, alter or change his role a little bit, in my opinion. But I do expect him to be a starter when the season opens. Another Cam Thomas question. Well, when will we have answers on Cam Thomas? Will he be back? October 1st is the deadline for restricted free agents to sign the qualifying offer. That can be pushed back if the Nets and Cam Thomas agree to it. But they're really it doesn't really have to reach a conclusion anytime soon. Cam has until that October 1st date to take the qualifying offer or not. So both sides, could play this out long, and they really don't have any incentive to have to get something done right now. So I think there will be something done ahead of the start of the regular season, but I wouldn't be surprised if we're closing August, getting into September, and there's nothing done. That wouldn't shock me. Everything we've heard is that the Nets are far apart on where they are at with Cam Thomas and negotiations. So we'll see, but I think that this is something that could drag out a little longer. Last question. Will the Nets retire Joe Johnson's number 7? There's been a ton of ISO Joe content lately, and both Yegor and Michael Porter Jr. chose the number, then switched. I have no inside knowledge on whether the Nets plan to do something like that. Obviously, there's Joe Johnson and Kevin Durant. Both wore the number 7. I do not think that the Nets should retire Joe Johnson's number. And I say that as somebody who loved watching Joe Johnson play, ISO Joe, Clutch Joe. He was just an electrifying player, a guy who had just absolute stones and hit a ton of big shots for the Nets. But I think Nets fans, just based on the history, maybe there's a low bar for retiring numbers, but I don't think you can be retiring a guy like Joe Johnson's number based on what he did on the team. He played really well for the team, but you look at it, he played 3.5 seasons. He made 1 All-Star team. He averaged 15, 4, and 3, won 1 playoff series, and then got bounced, by the Heat in a 4-1 series. So when you accomplish that little as a team and you're a guy who played for a short amount of time, made 1 All-Star team, averaged 15 points per game, is that somebody who should have their number retired? No. I think that Kevin Durant has a better argument just because of his pedigree as a player. And I think retiring Kevin Durant's number would be kind of crazy based on a guy who, I guess maybe he doesn't have a better case than Joe Johnson because he requested a couple trades. But if the Nets are trying to, kind of align themselves with all-time greats, Kevin Durant definitely has more pedigree, and you definitely want to be on good terms with a guy like that. But I don't think either of them deserve to have their jersey retired. So, Michael Porter Jr. and Yegor Dillman picking number 7 and then switching, maybe something is in the works, but ISO Joe, love him. Don't think he should have his number retired. That's all the questions I got from you guys, though. I really appreciate everybody who submitted and participated. I got, a lot of feedback, got emails, tweet responses, all that. So it means a lot. Love getting to hear what you guys have to say. But that does it for today's episode of Locked On Nets. If you guys do not already, go subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, whether Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you enjoy the content, smash that like button, leave a comment. Anything you guys can do to engage is much appreciated. But I'm chugging on as we get deeper into August. I'll have more Nets content for you guys all, and I'll be back on Monday talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.